It's very delicious to act with beautiful men. Some of them are in the realm of fantasy. Al Pacino.
Angie Dickinson was once one of the most admired women in Hollywood. She had beauty, confidence, and talent that made her unforgettable on screen. But behind her charming smile was a woman who fought silent battles that the world never saw. Now, at 93, Angie is no longer afraid to speak about the dark side of her glamorous life. For decades, she stayed quiet to protect reputations, to avoid the backlash that came with honesty. But after a lifetime of keeping secrets, she has chosen truth over silence. Her story is not about revenge. It's about setting herself free from the weight of everything she was forced to hide. Angie says there were 5 men in her life who changed her forever. Not through love, but through control, betrayal, and heartbreak. Each one left a scar that shaped her career and her spirit. These are the stories that show how even the brightest stars can be dimmed by the people who claim to love them the most. Before fame made her a household name, Angie was just a girl from North Dakota with big dreams. She had no family connections, no training, only a burning desire to prove herself. When she met Frank Sinatra, it seemed like a dream come true. To the world, they looked like the perfect couple, the golden singer and the rising actress. But Angie later revealed that what looked like romance was really a cage. Frank's love came with rules. At first, he was charming, sending her flowers, inviting her to private dinners, treating her like royalty. But soon, that attention turned into control. He wanted to decide which roles she took, who she could act with, and what kind of scenes she could perform. When she disobeyed him, strange things happened. Scripts disappeared, directors changed their minds, and opportunities vanished overnight. Frank didn't yell or hit her, he simply made one phone call, and doors closed everywhere. Angie realized that he didn't love her. He owned her. The industry saw her as lucky, but no one saw the fear she carried. It took years for her to escape, and even after it ended, Sinatra's shadow followed her. His power was so great that a single word from him could end a career. And for a time, it nearly ended hers. After her painful relationship with Sinatra, Angie thought she had finally found peace with famous composer Burt Bacharach. He was talented, charming, and thoughtful, or so it seemed. When they married, the world celebrated them as a golden couple, the beautiful actress and the musical genius. But inside their home, Angie faced a different reality. Burt was often absent, lost in his work and his fame. When their daughter, Nikki, was born, Angie's life changed. Nikki was born with a developmental condition that required constant care. Angie gave up roles and stayed home to take care of her. But Burt slowly drifted away. He was never there for doctor visits or sleepless nights. Angie called him once from a hospital, asking for help. But his only question was whether her call would delay his flight. Later, when she needed his signature for Nikki's treatment, he told her not to call unless their daughter had died. Those words broke her. She continued raising Nikki alone, while Burt lived as though nothing had happened. Angie never exposed him publicly or tried to ruin his reputation. She carried her pain in silence. But after Nikki passed away in her 40s and Burt didn't even attend the funeral, Angie knew the truth could no longer stay hidden. Behind every love song he wrote, there was a woman who lived a silent tragedy he chose to ignore. In the golden age of television, Jack Webb was a powerful name. He created hit shows and had the authority to make or break careers. When Angie met him early in her career, she hoped for an opportunity to shine. After a strong audition, she thought she had finally earned a major role. But everything changed overnight. Calls stopped, meetings were canceled, and the role disappeared without explanation. Later, a friend in the industry told her the truth. Jack had made an inappropriate advance that Angie politely rejected. That single no cost her everything. Within a day, 3 of her roles were canceled. Producers stopped calling. Her name quietly vanished from casting lists. She wasn't fired publicly, she was erased silently. Webb never confronted her, never apologized, and the world never knew. To outsiders, it looked like she had chosen to step back from acting. But the truth was that one man's ego decided her fate. Years later, Jack Webb was celebrated as a television legend, receiving tributes and praise, while Angie's struggle was buried beneath silence. She didn't speak out because, in that era, no one would have believed her. Speaking against a powerful man could end a career completely. So, she smiled for cameras and carried on, even though she knew the system wasn't built to protect women like her. Now, at 93, she finally says his name, not with anger, but with truth. Because silence, she says, is what allows such things to continue. By the time Angie met Larry King, she was older and wiser, but still carrying the emotional wounds of her past. Larry came into her life like a calm wave, gentle, understanding, and attentive. He listened to her stories and made her feel seen after years of being ignored. At first, she thought she had finally found real love. But soon, his care became control. He wanted to know where she was, who she met, what she ate. He called it love, but it was surveillance. He asked to read her scripts before she accepted roles, and grew distant when she spent time with friends. Slowly, Angie realized she was being isolated. Larry never hit her or shouted, but he manipulated her through guilt. If she disagreed with him, he would harm himself or destroy their belongings, making her feel responsible. Once, she found a microphone hidden in her car. When she asked him why, he said it helped him understand her feelings. That's when she realized she wasn't being loved. She was being watched. One night, after he destroyed all their photos, she packed her things and left quietly. For weeks, she lived in a small apartment with the blinds closed, afraid and ashamed. In those days, emotional abuse wasn't discussed, and without bruises, no one believed something was wrong. Now, Angie speaks openly, so others might recognize what she couldn't. That love built on control isn't love at all. The final betrayal in Angie Dickinson's story didn't come from a lover, but from someone she called a friend. Johnny Carson, the famous talk show host, once invited her to appear on his show to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award. She walked on stage smiling, proud of her long career. But just before the cameras rolled, Carson whispered something that froze her heart. He told her he had removed a video clip from airing, a clip where she spoke honestly about a Hollywood producer who had hurt her in the past. He said he did it to save her, but then turned to the audience and praised her for being a woman who knew when to stay quiet. Everyone applauded, thinking it was a compliment, but to Angie it was humiliation. Once again, a man decided when she could speak and when she should be silent. After that night, her phone stopped ringing. Her name disappeared from nominations, and her once bright career faded into the background. No scandal, no headline, just quiet exile. The entertainment world didn't need to destroy women publicly. All it took was a whisper from the right man, and the industry turned its back. For Angie, that night marked the moment she realized silence wasn't strength. It was surrender, and she was done surrendering. At 93, Angie Dickinson no longer hides behind politeness or fear. She speaks not to destroy reputations, but to reclaim her own story. She knows that speaking now won't change the past, but it can shine a light on what so many women in her generation endured. Her story isn't just about 5 men who hurt her. It's about a system that rewarded silence and punished truth. For every Angie, there were dozens of others who vanished from Hollywood without explanation. Some were forgotten completely. Angie refused to disappear. Even when her career slowed, she found ways to keep working, to keep her dignity, and to remind the world she was still here. She doesn't call her story tragic. She calls it honest, because only through honesty can healing begin. In her own words, "I kept quiet for too long. Now I speak not out of anger, but because truth is the only way to stay alive." Angie Dickinson's journey is more than just a series of painful relationships. It's the story of a woman who faced power, control, and silence, and still stood tall. She endured things that could have broken anyone, yet she found the strength to keep moving forward. Her courage to speak now, in her 90s, reminds us that it's never too late to tell your truth. Hollywood is built on glamour, but behind the lights are stories like Angie's, stories that reveal what happens when power and ego go unchecked. Her decision to speak out is a gift to the next generation, a reminder that silence may protect others, but it destroys you. Angie Dickinson doesn't seek pity or applause. She only wants her story to be heard, so that others who have suffered quietly can know they are not alone. Her life proves that even when the world tries to erase you, your truth can still find its way to the light. And in the end, that truth becomes your greatest victory. When Angie looks back at her life now, she realizes that silence was the unspoken rule of survival in old Hollywood. In those days, actresses were told to smile, stay pretty, and never cause trouble. The industry was run by powerful men, and women who spoke up were labeled as difficult or unstable. Angie remembers hearing stories of actresses who vanished overnight. One day they were on posters, and the next, their names were gone from credits. She says that silence was like a currency. You could trade it for roles, protection, or even a reputation. But it always came with a price. Every time I stayed quiet, Angie says, a small part of me disappeared. She knew that speaking out would end her career, but staying quiet slowly erased her soul. Even at the peak of her fame, she carried that invisible burden. Fans saw confidence, but behind the scenes, she lived with fear. She often wondered if true success was even possible for a woman who refused to be silent. Now, in her old age, she says she's not angry anymore, just tired of pretending that silence was ever noble. Fame, Angie says, is a double-edged sword. It brings admiration, but it also creates isolation. She recalls the loneliness of walking into parties filled with laughter and still feeling alone. Everyone wanted something from her: publicity, gossip, or a connection to her fame. But very few wanted to know her. She often described Hollywood friendships as seasonal. People stayed close only when your name was shining. Once the spotlight moved to someone new, they disappeared. Angie remembers birthdays spent alone in hotel rooms, eating dinner by herself while tabloids printed stories about her glamorous life. She laughed at the irony but cried when the cameras stopped rolling. The loneliness didn't break her, it shaped her. It taught her the value of real people, real love, and real peace. That's why, in her later years, she chose a quieter life, far from red carpets and bright lights. She still loves acting, but she loves honesty more. Fame, she says, taught her that applause fades, but inner peace lasts forever. Through all the pain, Angie found wisdom that only time could give. She says every betrayal taught her something valuable. From Sinatra, she learned that love without respect is not love. From Burt Bacharach, she learned that success means nothing if you fail your family. From Jack Webb, she understood how power can destroy people from the inside. From Larry King, she realized that control disguised as affection is still control. And from Johnny Carson, she learned that silence protects the wrong people. These lessons didn't come easy. They came with tears, loss, and years of regret. But Angie refuses to see herself as a victim. Victims stay in the past, she says. Survivors tell their story. Her story, now told honestly, is not one of hate, it's one of awareness. She wants younger generations to know that kindness is not weakness, that boundaries are strength, and that speaking your truth is the bravest act of all. She says if she could go back in time, she would still choose the same path, because even in pain, she found purpose. Most people slow down at 93, but Angie believes age gives her a kind of freedom she never had before. When you're young, she says, you're afraid of what people will think. When you're old, you finally realize none of it matters. That realization changed her. Now, she speaks without fear of being misunderstood. She doesn't need fame, and she doesn't need approval. She has already lived through everything people can say about her. Speaking out now isn't about revenge, it's about release. For decades, her story was told by journalists, gossip writers, and biographers who added their own twist. But now, Angie's words are her own. Every sentence she speaks comes from a lifetime of surviving, forgiving, and learning. She hopes that sharing her truth helps others find courage, too. It's never too late to say what should have been said, she tells young women who write to her. And if no one listens, say it anyway. Because your voice is yours. It's the only thing they can't take away. When asked if she forgives the men who hurt her, Angie pauses for a long moment. Her eyes soften and she smiles gently. Forgiveness isn't about them, she says. It's about me. For years, she carried anger like a shield. It made her feel strong, but it also kept her trapped in pain. Over time, she realized that forgiveness doesn't excuse what happened. It simply frees her from reliving it. She says she doesn't hate Frank Sinatra, Burt Bacharach, Jack Webb, Larry King, or Johnny Carson anymore. They were products of their time, she explains. And so was I. She believes people act out of their own pain, fear, or ego. Understanding that helped her heal. She doesn't want revenge or apologies. What she wants is peace. Angie says she has forgiven, but she hasn't forgotten. Forgetting would mean erasing her own story. And that story, she says, is what made her who she is. Every scar, she says, is proof that I lived, and I lived a full life. Growing old in Hollywood isn't easy, especially for women. The same industry that once adored Angie now barely remembers her. But she's okay with that. I had my time, she says. Now it's someone else's turn. She knows the cameras no longer follow her, but she doesn't miss them. What she values now is quiet mornings, simple meals, and the laughter of old friends who truly care. She often says that aging is the best filter. It shows you what really matters. Fame fades, beauty changes, but dignity lasts forever. Angie takes pride in the fact that she survived an era that broke so many others. Her legacy, she hopes, isn't her beauty or her movies. It's her honesty. If people remember me for anything, she says, I hope it's for speaking my truth when it was hardest to do so. In her small home, surrounded by memories, she keeps photos of her daughter, her films, and the friends who stood by her. Each picture tells a story, not of glamour, but of resilience. Before ending her recent interview,